you, Jackie, what is HIV and AIDS discrimination in the workplace? How would you describe it?
Okay, maybe let me start by saying discrimination in the workplace can move from HIV to all the other workplaces, in all the other policies in the workplace, depending on the condition of the employee. Now, in this case, HIV discrimination is when a person is HIV positive and the employer wouldn't want them, for instance, to give them a promotion. They wouldn't want them to give them any other benefits based on the fact that they are HIV positive, based on the fact that sometimes they will be sick and they will have to stay home, and then they will say, no, then we're not going to give you a position because you are not always in the workplace to do that work. So that's what HIV discrimination is.
Okay, and then is an employee required by law to disclose their HIV status to an employer or potential employer? Say, for instance, in an interview, can an employer make them take an HIV test? And what does the labor law say about this?
Okay, two questions. I will answer the first one. Whether the worker can be tested for HIV. No worker can be tested for HIV. There are different workplaces. There is what happens in the South African National Defence Force. There is what happens in the SAA, and then there's just ordinary workplaces. And actually in the South African Defence Force, we actually fought at some point to say it is not necessary. But when you think about it, when you go to war and then there's blood all over, obviously that is a need. But the employer will, according to the law, first go to the courts and ask for permission to test that soldier. So that's what it is. And then a worker doesn't have to disclose to any employer, to any employee, to anyone, to their wife, to their children, to anybody. Unless, if of course, you understand that you need support from these people. You might need support from an employer because then you have to go and get your medication. Sometimes you have to need more days because you have to, you are sick. Some of the opportunistic infection can take you a week to be at home. If you've got pneumonia, for instance, you have to be at home for a week. And therefore, if you have a good relationship with your employer, then you will disclose. But also, disclosure broadly helps you to be free as a person, because then people know how to be there for you. People are able to understand how to support you. People know your needs, and people know that probably when something is happening like this or like that, they will be there for you. HIV positive is an emotional journey for people. Some don't need any support, and emotional support is very critical, because at some point you're asking yourself, where did I get this HIV? How did I get this HIV? Was I at fault? Why did this person infect me? Sometimes you don't even know who infected you, because you are healthy for a very long time, and one day some opportunistic infection puts you down, and then you realize later that you are positive, and then you're asking your question, all these questions. How did I get it? Why? Who? Why me? Now, that process of mourning, of being angry, of being happy, of trying to accept your status is very, very critical. It needs serious support for any individual. And obviously, we are different as people, and therefore, that support is very important.
Okay, so you're saying that should an employer say to a worker, all of you must take a test because I need to know your status as your employer for safety reasons. The workers can say, no, we know that the law prohibits such unless the employer has a court interdict that says they can do so.
Exactly. Exactly. So when we introduced the Code of Good Practice on HIV and AIDS, most of the employers, and especially SAPCOA, wanted to make it compulsory for workers to test for HIV so that they can prepare. And then we said, no, why are you not doing it for cancer? Why are you not doing it for any other disease? Why do you want to prepare yourself for this? Prepare yourself properly. I mean, why are you not preparing yourself for any accident that can kill anyone anytime? So why this? And then we refuse. So no worker can be tested at any given time unless the employer get any court interdict. And up until now, I have never gone past any law that says, or someone that comes from court and say, yes, I have been given the permission to test. So at this point in time, we don't have anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now tell me, in cases where you still have employers and workplaces that discriminate against HIV positive employees, what can the workers do legally to protect themselves from such?
The Employment Equity Section 7 is there to protect those workers. There is the Code of Good Practice is there. There's all the legal frameworks that are there, your occupational health and safety, your employment equity, your compensation fund. So the legal requirement that is in the Code of Good Practice on HIV and AIDS provides you with the legal framework on how then you can protect yourself and then what is it that you can do to deal with that employer who is discriminating against you or who wants to test you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in a case of a worker who's probably not clued up on such things, where can they go for help?
Well, we have a legal clinic that can help workers, and we are also saying to the shop stewards are also very conversant on the law. They can also be able to help because they are the first line protection for these workers. Any other condition that is unfair to the workers, the first line person who can engage with the worker there is the shop steward. So the shop steward will then look at the policies in the workplace, look at the guidelines in the workplace and say, employer, you are not supposed to do this and this. According to the policy, according to the law, you cannot do this and that. So the workers are actually protected in terms of that.
You said we have a legal clinic. When you say we, are you referring to Cosatu or are you referring to the Labor Department?
No, I am referring to in the country, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
You remember we had what is called the legal clinic, which is based in vets.
Okay.
Workers can go there.
Oh,
And then
okay.
we also have the treatment action campaign that is actually also being able to can help. So it depends where you want to go. If you just go into the Department of Labor, you will see that the code will indicate that you can go to these people, you can go to the CCMA. I mean, it's open there. You can be protected. The law is there for you. You just need to just ask your shop stewards to direct you on where you can go.
So there are a lot of avenues for help.
Yes, there are a lot of avenues for workers to get a legal protection around that.
Okay. And then in terms of raising HIV/AIDS awareness in the workplace, what can employers do in the workplace together with workers to raise awareness about this? Because I know that in some places it's still a bit taboo to talk about it. There's a certain stigma attached to it.
Yeah.
So for employers, what programs can they put in place to work together with workers to say we are aware that some of you might be positive. This is what we can do together.
Yeah. You see, the thing is that employers are not taking this matter serious, and it's very unfortunate that they're not doing that. So the first thing that they would have to do is to keep on educating people around HIV, to keep on saying you can't get HIV from hugging a person. That's a basic, simple thing that you need to do. That's one thing. Secondly, you need to have posters and pamphlets, and the workplace must show that there is no room for discrimination in the workplace based on your HIV status. The workplace must be live with all the campaigns. You can put posters, you can have programs of education, you can bring in people that are HIV positive, and if employers have those workers that are brave enough to disclose and say, I am HIV positive, here I am, look at me. Of course, a few months ago, I was sick, but then now I am healthy. I've gone through all the processes. I am eating well. I can jump, I can run, I can do anything like any other person. And if that person is available in the workplace and can help the employers to teach other workers that HIV is like any other disease, then they need to be able to work with that person. But then the person doesn't have to only come from the workers. If a CEO is HIV positive, let him come out and say, I am HIV positive. There is nothing wrong with me. I am having sex. I am using a condom. I do play soccer. I do eat whatever that I want to eat. I do go up the mountain. The only thing is I am taking my medication properly. I am eating properly. I am exercising. I am here. I am taking care of myself. I've got a good support group that is there, or a good support system that is there to be able to cope with the disease.
Okay, and then the other question I wanted to ask is in terms of these wellness programs that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Is does the law require companies to do such, or is it optional for them to?
I think it's optional for them to do so because, and this is one thing that we have been fighting. I think in 2000, when the first code was adopted in South Africa, we then went to the International Labour Organization and said, we don't think that it must just be a code. It needs to be a convention. Mm-hmm. Now, if it becomes a convention, then it directs countries to develop a law. There are countries that have laws, I can't remember, but there are countries that will have a law that says this is a regulation on occupation, on HIV and AIDS in the workplace, or just on HIV, and therefore, it's easier for that. But at the moment, it is not a forced, but when you look at the code will say you as an employer must provide a safe and healthy workplace for the employees. And why I am identifying this, I want to take you back to the hospitals. Mm-hmm. Now, in a hospitals, if you are a nurse, you always have to use injections and whatever. The Occupational Health and Safety says you must provide precautionary measures for these nurses. It means you need to have your gloves so that when the nurse injects a HIV positive client or patient, and then there's somehow blood that goes, and then she's protected. So you see how that tallies to, so it's very simple. Now, if then in some point that nurse gets infected, then the Compensation Act then will cover that employee because then she was infected at the workplace. Mm-hmm. So you see how it tallies in. So how then we get people to be protected around that. Now coming to also some of the wellness programs in the workplace, I sometimes feel like some of these wellness programs dilutes the interventions for HIV, because then it is just a clinic there. You can go there and test for hypertension and whatever, and then it's so it dilutes how the employer will effectively treat people with HIV. But at the same time, you don't want to stigmatize those people with HIV, So it's a very delicate situation where you are caught between the rock and hard place to saying, what is it that you want to do? And then what workers do, they don't go to the wellness, they go outside. And then the employers come back to Cosatu and say, yes, we have these clinics in the workplaces, but your members are not coming. But we also can't force our members to go there. And you must remember, the history between an employer and employee is not an easy one. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you cannot force those workers to go there. But of course, we are happy and we appreciate the fact that the employers are providing the wellness programs and they're making sure that workers that are HIV positive, are treated properly. But then, it's a choice. Mm-hmm. It's a choice as well. And a comrade with HIV is always our comrade. So that's how we must treat them.
Okay. Yeah. And then lastly, Cosatu, what role is it playing in all of this? How are you helping workers who are HIV positive or affected by it to be able to protect their rights in the workplace?
Yeah.
How are you assisting?
Well, at this level, where I am now is mainly about policy development. And once those policies are there, as I was indicating, we have the code, and the code is now implemented in the workplace. Now, the shop stewards from our affiliates are the ones at the coal face of everything. They are the ones that must be able to take care of these workers. And therefore, what we do then as Cosatu and as affiliates, we have promotional campaigns. We make people aware of those legislations that are there to defend these workers, to make sure that when in any event, when something happens, then they can come back to us and say, I receive a lot of calls. For instance, workers or shop steward will say, the employer is not wanting to provide any leave for this worker because they think that the worker is HIV positive. And then I will direct them on what to do, which part of the code they must go back, and then they put up a case, they do a grievance, and then they win the cases because the employer has got just a perception about this worker, and there are no facts. And that is pure stigmatization of the worker just because you've lost weight, and then the employer would think that, now you've got HIV. So therefore, we are training, we are making sure that the shop stewards are very aware of that. But another leg is that even the employees will stigmatize, against their own colleagues, and therefore we train them and say, it might be you tomorrow. So you need to make sure that you leave that to the employer to make sure that if this worker is not available to do their work, then they get someone else to do their work. They don't overburden you with the work for your work and the other employee's work who is absent.